Hey, babe, and welcome to the Peripatia Podcast, a talk show for women. This is the place to talk about how we're ditching our bad habits, long-held patterns, and limiting beliefs. The time is now to stop outsourcing and start insourcing our happiness and bliss. Am I right? I'm Heather Lowe, your empowering life coach, ready to guide you on this incredible journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and freedom. If you're feeling stuck in the cycle and wondering what life could look like if you liberated yourself, well, I've got something just for you. I created a free guide to help you take those first empowering steps towards a healthier and more fulfilling life, the one that you desire. This guide is packed with practical tools, mindset shifts, journal prompts that dig deep, and real-life insights to support you in making changes that truly stick. So if you're ready to explore what's possible, head over to ditchthedrink.com and grab your free guide today. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. And if you want a group of babes to journey with, I've got you there too. We're staying connected through the Ditch the Drink Insider app with private forums, weekly group calls, master classes, live workshops, book clubs, in real life events, and more. And the best part is you can join for free with a 7-day trial. I'd love to continue the conversation on the inside. Now, let's dive into today's episode and get inspired to create the life you deserve, like so many other babes are doing right now. Here we go. Hey, babes. This episode contains discussions of sexual assault, which may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. Please take care of yourself. Feel free to skip this episode if you're not in a space to hear these topics. If you or someone you know needs support, please consider reaching out to a trusted resource or support organization. There is a sexual assault hotline at 1-800-656-4673. Please, above all, take care of yourself, babes. Hello, Peripatia Podcast listeners. I'm so happy to bring you somebody so special to me today, Meg Geisweit. She is an author. She wrote Intoxicating Lies. She has a community, Right Back to You, which is fairly new, maybe in its third cohort. Meg is just an awesome person, has also become a friend of mine. And when I first started this podcast, we connected. Of course, you were an obvious choice because you're a woman in recovery and all that stuff. But I said to you, it's not a specific like sobriety recovery podcast. So we have to find a topic that's different than your recovery story or that's different than your book. We have to draw out something that would be a more unique topic. And I about fell to my knees with your bravery, Meg, when you said you would be willing to talk about sexual assault.
Oh, you're kind of making me tear up a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks, Heather. I mean, I love you. I think of you as a dear friend, and I didn't expect to get emotional, but your introduction did that to me. I want to help women. This is something that we carry not only within our bodies, but emotionally as a trauma that there's a lot of shame around, especially when we're drinking. And I think that the more we can share our stories, as hard as they are to talk about, the more that we can see that we aren't at fault, that somebody took advantage of a situation, and that unfortunately alcohol a lot of times does play a part in those scenarios. Mm-hmm. And I think that by sharing the story or stories, because it happened to me unfortunately 2 times, and I do talk about it a little bit in my book, I want women to say, oh my gosh, I'm not alone, and that they feel safe to just feel seen. And I think that when we are seen, heard, loved, and validated in our journeys, that's when we really begin to heal. And so I really hope that our conversation today brings some healing for others.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I did expect both of us to get emotional. I fully expected that because It's such a tender topic, and I can't think of something more vulnerable, to be honest. So the fact that you offered that to me and to this podcast and these listeners is really, really important. If it's okay, I'd love to read a little bit from your book. I think you have a really great short way of sharing one of your experiences, and we can go from there. It's titled An Education in Shame. Put my glasses on, showing my age. I settled on a college 6 hours from home, far enough from your turmoil of divorce. Even though we were hundreds of miles between me and my past, the word you'll never amount to much still rang through my head as I raced from extracurricular activity to extracurricular activity on campus to prove my worth. Alcohol, particularly beer, was more readily available in college, where $2 got you into any keg party on campus. One night, I was inviting at one of those on-campus keg parties when a good-looking, muscular rugby boy started flirting with me as we gulped down our cheap beer. He asked me to go outside with him to talk because the music was too loud. Naive and buzzed on beer, I followed him outside. He led me behind a bush where no one could see or hear me. He balled his hands into fists and punched them into my shoulders, thrusting me backwards. I landed on my back so hard that the leaves on the ground ended up in my mouth and entangled in my hair. He immediately jumped on top of me, pinning me to the ground. I could not move any portion of my body. I only had my voice. Knowing no one could hear or see me, I screamed, "No, get off me." This did not stop him. I knew I was going to be raped right there behind that bush. So I'm going to stop there, but you remember this. You remember this moment vividly, just reading that, writing it, bringing back those words. And how did you feel at that time? You had been drinking. What was your first reaction to that?
I mean, I really thought that this person wanted to talk to me outside, and because the music was too loud, that was the intention. And knowing now what I know about what alcohol does to our brain and that we don't make good decisions and think things through. And again, I was a freshman. I was naive. I followed him outside and he knew exactly what his intention was and what he was going to do to me. And I was completely blindsided. And I think in the moment, it happened so fast that I couldn't even believe what was happening. And so I went into the trauma response of fight or flight, and I could not move any portion of my body. He had everything pinned down. And so I thought, I cannot physically fight back because I can't move anything. And that was the first time in my life that I had lost complete control of my body. I had no control over my body whatsoever, or what was going to happen to my body. And that was terrifying. And so I started using my voice because that was the only thing that I had. And so I thought, I'll just start making myself disgusting. I'll pee on you. I'll defecate on you. I just anything to try. And, I'm screaming no, but no one can hear me because the music is blaring and I'm behind a bush and no one can see me. And I'll never know what words I used because it's kind of a blur, but whatever I said, he got off of me. And thank God I was not raped, but I, was sexually assaulted. He did touch me. And so I ran back inside the party with the leaves in my hair and just in complete shock and not even really fully comprehending what had just happened to me. And my roommate said to me, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" I looked completely disheveled. And I said, "We have to leave. We have to go right now." And I remember just trying to understand, my brain could not wrap around how another human being could do this to another human being. Was it something I said? I immediately went to blaming myself. Was it something I said? Was it what I wore? Was it because I was so drunk? Why would somebody do this to me? And I started shaming myself and blaming myself because logically I could not understand it otherwise. And that's the really I think, sad part to this is that that is how our brains work. It's like, wait, what? We have to make sense of why another human being would do this to us. And so this is somebody who wanted to be in power, be in control, wanted to take control over me, right? This is not my fault. This was a violation. And, but as a woman, just never having something like this obviously happen before, my brain went into, what did I do wrong to deserve this? Or how did I bring this on? How did I lead this to happen? And I just decided to keep the secret myself. I knew that if I told my parents about it, they would pull me out of the school, which was 6 hours from my house, and make me go to the college town, at University of Delaware. And my parents were, when you read the part in the book about them going through a divorce, it was War of the Roses, and I didn't want to go back home. So I kept this shame and the secrecy inside. But what grew in me was a fear of this happening again to me. And I took Taekwondo. I thought, I'm never going to allow this happen to me again. And unfortunately, after college, so that was freshman year, so we're probably now 5-6 years. So after college, I got myself into a very similar situation, but this time much worse. And I don't know if you want me to go into that one, but that one was one of a heavy binge drinking night with somebody I had just started dating, and got myself into a situation where I was date raped and did not give consent. There was a lot of alcohol. So it was, I think, again, when there's alcohol involved, there's a lot of blurred lines of what the other person thinks is okay and what you think is okay. And there isn't good decision making. And that shattered me. That really made me feel unworthy and worthless and broken after that, because I really thought I would never allow that type of thing to happen again. But this was somebody that I trusted because I was dating him. And so I really went into a trauma response after that of overfunctioning. I had to control everything in my life because I had no control over those situations, and especially in my body. And this trauma was living in my body. Unbeknownst to me, I'm in my 20s. No one's really talking about getting therapy or self-help back in, I'm 51 now. So, back then nobody was really talking about that. And so I just went into this, make it look like everything's perfect, make it look like it all is going really well, and be in control of your sales. So I got into sales, and then I got into aesthetic sales, and literally selling women on the notion of, if you look beautiful, you'll get what you want in this world. Like, this is what I was showing up, in these incredible designer outfits with my nails done, the shoes, the hair, and using these products, and just really drinking down this, mask of perfection, and that everything was okay when really everything was a hot mess inside. And really not kind of aware of it, because I was winning awards at work, and I was in a sales environment where it was rewarded. You work hard, you play hard, and that included lots of alcohol. And so it just kept going for years, where I was living in this pretty unhealthy cycle of thinking I was in control, thinking that I was showing to the outside world I had it all. But inside, it was a real struggle. And it wasn't until I got sober and I watched a movie with a date rape scene in it, and I had like a visceral response. I started sweating and shaking and realizing that this was still in my body. Even though I had done some talk therapy around it, I had not truly healed this wound that had been living in my body, and a fear that had been living in my body for decades. And alcohol was one of the ways that I could escape that madness.
I'm so sorry that all those situations happened to you. The first is like, it makes so much sense that you would blame yourself, because if you blamed yourself and it was your fault, then there would be something you could do to ensure that this wouldn't happen again. So it was almost self-protection to say, oh, this was on me, because then that's going to protect you next time. If there's some lever you can pull, to keep yourself safe. So no wonder. And also, how it makes me sad to think this boy likes me. And who wouldn't? That's so beautiful and innocent. And who wouldn't like you? Of course, you're a beautiful, intelligent, wonderful, kind woman now, but just a little gal back then. Who wouldn't like you? Of course, that was your instinct. He likes me. He wants to go outside and talk to me. The music's too loud. You had no reason to believe that wouldn't be true. And then how foolish you must have felt because of him, not because of you, but to take that blame too. Like, I was foolish to think that he actually liked me.
Yeah. Yeah. I blamed myself at every turn to make sense of it, to, like you said, to just wrap my brain around it. I just could not understand how another human being could do this to another human being. And especially when someone's screaming no. And, it was like, I couldn't comprehend what was happening. It was like surreal. And, I understand why people dissociate, right? And kind of black out from these situations, because I think that's probably where I would have had to go to next. And I was lucky that I had my mouth to be able to, talk him out of it in a way. I don't know if somebody walked by the bush. I'll never know why he got off of me, but I am lucky in that sense. And I think that, the shame was there. And then the second situation just shattered me. Because again, this was somebody I trusted. Like you said, I trusted that he wanted to go outside, right? It was this trusted situation where I thought that I was safe again, and I was not.
Well, this one even more so because you had a relationship with them.
Yeah.
In the first time you went in, you told your friend and you left, and you decided not to tell anybody else. Do you recall your friend's reaction to that?
She was just like, do you want to report this? And I just said, and again, I wasn't in like a really good frame of mind. I was blaming myself. I mean, I was literally analyzing my outfit. Was my skirt too short? Was my outfit too tight? And so we're freshmen, and she didn't really know what to do either, right? We just didn't have the awareness like we have today, where I've had several conversations with my daughter who's in high school, right? I never had these conversations.
Right. Well, and the consequences of that, of making a spectacle of it and putting the spotlight on it and pressing charges, and a doctor and a cop and a lawyer and your parents, you didn't want the consequences of that.
No, I didn't. And what's sad is that, I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go back to University of Delaware. And my parents told me if something like this happened, they would pull me out. It was almost like that was looming over it as the, reason to not tell. I mean, it just, looking back doesn't even really make much sense, right? But I did not want to go home. That was like the last thing I wanted to do. And I was still in this blame and shame that I think a lot of women feel and are trapped in for years after something like this happens, because it is where you think, I trusted this person. I maybe had a relationship with this person. I decided to do XYZ and got myself into this situation. And it's not our fault. That's the biggest thing I want.
You did not ask to be violated, no matter what. No. You didn't ask for somebody to take power over you. It is not your fault, for sure.
No.
Did you ever run into that first guy again? Did you ever see him around campus?
Well, I actually started dating another guy, and I went over to his house one day, and guess who his roommate was? Was the guy that attacked me. And I said to him, I cannot go into your house. I can't be around this individual. He said, what happened? And I told him what happened. And he said, are you kidding me? I cannot believe he did this to you. And I said, he instilled a fear in me that I never had before. And I cannot be at your house. I cannot be around this person. And he actually had this guy come and apologize to me. And I said, I will never forgive you for what you did to me. You instilled a fear in me and in my body that I will have for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but I know that we're supposed to have forgiveness, but when someone violates somebody like that, it's really hard to find forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've found the forgiveness for myself. And I think that has brought me a lot of healing, where I have forgiven myself for shaming and blaming myself, and understanding and having compassion for the young girl that was naive and didn't know. And I've done somatic therapy now that has gotten this out of my body. And that is why I'm able to talk to you today, because if I had not done somatic therapy, I would not be able to have this conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go back to that bush, and I had to go back to that bedroom where the other incident happened. And I had to wrap my arms around that little girl who was completely violated and taken advantage of. And, I was so broken, and I didn't know if I would ever be loved and could trust. There were so many emotions around that. And I had to go back and heal that younger woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did this affect your relationships following that, with all this fear and with these incidents of violation?
Yeah,
And also wanting to keep it secret, to be honest, wanting to stuff it and not let anybody know.
I actually, after the second incident, I had met somebody that I thought I was going to marry, and I had told him about what happened to me. And he made me feel so protected and so safe. And here's the craziest part to the story. I thought I was going to marry him. I moved home for him. He was a family friend. And when I moved in, he became verbally abusive. He preyed on the fact that I was vulnerable. He knew that I needed somebody who was going to make me feel like that they were protective over me, but that protection turned into controlling me and not allowing me to leave the house and not have any friends, and then became verbally abusive behind closed doors. And that was a really hard relationship to get out of, because I had given up my job and my house and moved for this individual back home. And if it wasn't for my family, he took everything away from me. He knew that I was in a vulnerable place, and he took advantage of that. And if it weren't for my family, I remember saying to my dad, just bawling about how he was treating me. And I was staying with my dad. I had moved out of the house, and he said, Meg, if he truly loved you, he would be here right now. He doesn't love you. And it was like somebody slapped me across the face and woke me up. And after that, I did a lot of work on myself and spent a lot of time alone and didn't get into any relationships. And then I met my husband. And because of the work I had done, I was able to get into a healthy relationship.
How did you exit that relationship after your dad said that? And it felt like a slap across the face, but also maybe like a breath of fresh air to have heard the truth so clearly.
Yeah. He was very manipulative. He didn't let me go very easily. There was a lot of back and forth trying to make it work, not work. But when my dad said that, I was like, this is never going to work. Like, this is the truth. My father is showing me the truth that is the writing on the wall, and I need to wake up to this. I have got to get out of this manipulation. He just kept tearing me down. And I think this is what happens when you get into a verbally abusive or physically abusive relationship. They tear you down so low. And I was already low, right? I had just been date raped. So he knew this. He knew that this was a person that he could take advantage of. And so I had to build myself back up. And so when I met my husband, I said, I used to be this person. I'm not going to be that person anymore. This is who I am. This is what I will put up with. This is what I will not put up with. I was very clear about my boundaries and my expectations and what I wanted. And he showed up in a way. Obviously, we've been married for 20 plus years, 21 years. And so, but it took doing the work on myself and being very clear about what I wanted. But I thank God that guy, right, that I didn't marry that guy, and that my father said that to me. I thank God. Yeah. Because that would have been a divorce.
What were some of the pivotal moments after that helped you begin to reclaim your sense of self-worth?
I would definitely say that these courses that I took, and self-help books. I mean, I was still drinking at this time, so I wasn't 100% woken up. I don't want to sound like I was. I was still kind of caught up because I was in that sales culture. But I knew clearly I was starting to have value in myself, and realizing that I did not need a man to complete me, that I was worthy enough and I needed somebody to compliment me, and that I would rather be alone than be in another one of those situations. It was like, I'm done with these type of men who have literally manipulated and taken advantage of me, right? That was those 3 bad situations that I got myself into. And so it was like, I have to break this pattern. I am picking a certain type of guy. I'm kind of doing this over and over again, right?
Yeah. And I would say you're saying these situations that I got myself into, maybe, yes. Also, it's never okay for anyone to take advantage of anyone, no matter what situation, no matter what, no matter if you go outside, no matter if you roll in the leaves, no matter if you're dating them, that will never be okay. That is all on them and none on you. Just to be clear. Sure, you were in those situations. Sure, you found yourself there again. Still, it is never okay for somebody to take advantage and violate against your will with
100%.
You.
Yep. And I may even be saying that in a way, it's making me think like, am I still 100% healed if I'm saying it in a certain way where you're
trying to take responsibility for something that isn't yours to take responsibility for, but you're also trying to protect yourself to not be in that position again, totally understandable. How do you navigate the self-blame or shame that's often associated with this kind of sexual trauma?
Yeah, I think that it's important to be with a trauma-informed coach, first and foremost, a licensed coach or therapist. For me, somatic therapy, going back into my body and really finding where that pain lived and resided was a big thing for me than just getting on a chair or couch and talking about it. And going back and I think, and I do this today with any challenge that comes up. I feel like the very first step is acknowledging the pain and honoring it, not dismissing it, not pushing it away, not trying to fix it, just being with it. Like, that was really hard. That was really painful. That was true violation, right? And honoring what happened to me in that way, and then going back to that little girl, not little girl, but adolescent
19-year-old baby girl.
To me, she's a little girl, but
to me too.
Young woman. That young woman, and I had to get into those leaves with her and wrap my arms around her and be there for her in a way that I just had never done this type of work before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do take the reader through this in the book,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and realizing that this didn't define me,
Mm-hmm.
that I was enough,
Mm-hmm.
and that I am enough. This didn't break me. This person didn't steal my value like I had originally felt when I was younger. And that work of healing that brokenness, that shame that I felt like I had, it really was like, no, actually, this is a young woman who, like to your point, didn't know that when she went to go talk to somebody or went out on a date with somebody, that this would be the result, right? When this person swooped in and wanted and knew my most vulnerable thing that had happened to me, that took advantage of that too, right? In a relationship. So I don't blame myself anymore, and I don't have really even anger around it. I just feel compassion for that young girl who was doing the best that she could and just showing up with a full heart on her, you know, wearing her heart on her sleeve, like, I'm here for this. And this is somebody else's pain that they projected onto me and their crapola, right? That was taken out on me. And so I try to have compassion, not only for myself, but for the other person too. And that is where that forgiveness can come in. And I think when I do those steps of acknowledging it, honoring it, going back and kind of reparenting it with compassion, and then kind of compassion for the other person, it's like the little girl within me, the painful parts of me, they kind of like, it's like what I said earlier. Okay, I feel seen. I feel heard. I feel loved. I feel validated. Like that little girl can rest and say, okay, we're not rolling around in these leaves by ourselves. You are here with me, telling me I'm safe, telling me I'm loved, telling me I'm enough. And again, I had to do this all with a therapist. It wasn't like I just went and did this on my own. She walked me through this step by step. And that is where the healing for me really began. And there are still certain things that I can't play around where I'm pinned down. That's a no-go for me. I cannot. There's some things when people touch me a certain way, this lives in my body. And so it will always, you know, it's not like it will just poof go away. It's there, but it's there at a much less intensity. And the way that I know that is that watched another show, another incident on the show, another rape, and little tingle, a little bit of tingling, but not the sweating and the shaking and like the visceral response that I used to have in the past. That has gone away. And so that is how I know that I'm healing.
That is really beautiful to me, Meg, because it's like almost like you time travel back with your current self to go alongside your younger self. And that sort of connection, that sort of love story to you, from you, with love. And now when you see that scene on TV, it is a different reaction because you are safe with you. You're always going to be safe with you. Now, that person wasn't a safe person and that incident wasn't a safe incident, but you've got you now.
Yeah. And I have access to myself to that at any time. Right. Yeah.
So no matter what would happen to you, you're with you. You're linked arms with yourself. Your younger self, it's like a Russian nesting doll, right? She lives inside of who you are today. And this current Meg does have it, does have the compassion, does understand it's not your fault, does have the forgiveness for self. Maybe others someday, maybe not. Maybe that's the best we can do is understand that person's in pain and it's unfortunate you are an outcome of that. But you accept what happened, you understand what happened, and you've released a lot of it, but you're with yourself. So it sounds like a love story, a self-love story to me, that no matter what happens to you, you've always got you.
Yeah. And I feel like this is how we learn to trust ourselves and love. It's like, I know I've got my back, right? I know I'm going to I can go back and do this work. And I've healed enough now to be able to talk about it. And that's why I want other women to be able to hear this when it is such a hard conversation to have and be like, oh my gosh, there is a space and a place where healing can happen. And that you can come out on the other side of this and feel okay again in your body and not be driven by a fear or shame or the blame, and know that you can reclaim that power within you and that you have it.
That's so beautiful. And what I know is being a coach is it likely happens to the majority of us. Unfortunately, probably the majority of us have been in this, and most of us are not talking about it because we are full of shame, or we want to brush it under the rug, or we wish it didn't happen, or we think it was our fault somehow. And so
One in three.
the fact that you're sharing this out loud is going a long way towards healing anybody that's listening, that they can raise their hand and say, me too, right?
Yeah.
Is the book the first time you talked about it publicly? I mean, it's a pretty big thing to do, to literally put it in words in a book that you're publishing. Tell me about that. Or had you been talking about it prior to this?
No, it was it felt very vulnerable to put it out there. And it was the very first time that I had talked about it. And I appreciate you wanting to have a conversation about it, because I wasn't sure. I think there was only one other podcast that asked to speak about it. I think when you and I were kind of talking about this before we came on, hard things like grief and rape and things that are just really, really difficult conversations. We live in a culture and a society where we don't want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable, and it's, we haven't been trained really how to, or conditioned on how to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. And we know when we become alcohol free, we learn how to sit with that uncomfortable feeling of being the only person at the party who's not drinking, right? And so we learn how to be with those uncomfortable feelings. So I just want to say thank you for, and I commend you for allowing me to speak about it, because I don't think we talk enough about it. And I think the Me Too movement was just profound for me. It blew the lid off of it, and we are talking about it more and holding people more accountable. But I still have such a heartbreak for how many times this goes unreported, and how many times when you do try to report it, that and I hate to use this word, it's not really victim, it's survivor, is re-traumatized by talking about it and trying to get justice, and isn't believed. I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing, I mean, it just kind of, when there's a lot of alcohol involved and everyone's kind of a little bit blurred on what happened, but we know, that it takes an immense amount of courage to come forward and talk about this. That we need to believe women when they bring this forward, because usually we're not getting anything out of it, but, trying to help other women. And hopefully young boys to see and hear. I've really talked to my son a lot about consent, the importance of it, and how, just even, does she want to hold your hand? Does she want you to put her arm around you? Like, you have to ask these questions. They're not assumptions that should just be made. And I think that as parents, we can have these conversations with our kids more. I mean, of course, I've talked to my daughter at length about this, and she knows how serious this can be, especially if alcohol is involved. I mean, we've had probably ad nauseum conversations about this. And I think that if my story and sharing this encourages somebody to then talk to even their kids about it, we can change this going forward in the future for our future generations.
Absolutely, it does. You are changing the conversation by bringing it up, by talking about it. And I love to say you're talking to your daughter, but you're also talking to your son, because perhaps therein lies the bigger issue, right? And so of getting permission and asking and reading signs, so
no means no.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it was yes a minute ago and now it's not,
Right.
you know, so I definitely can appreciate that. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because I often tell my clients, and I'm somebody who ruminates on things, so I get it. I'm one of you, but your body doesn't know the difference of when something's happening for the first time and when you're thinking about it happening. So, for instance, every time I think about a conversation that hurt my feelings, it's hurting my feelings over and over again. It's as if it's happening over and over again because my brain and my body do not know the difference between reality and imagination or memory, or it feels the same in me. So I'm hurting myself. When I'm ruminating on something, I'm hurting myself about it, you know?
Yeah.
And in this situation, there is a going back with current Meg, linked arms to say, you're okay. I've got you. I love you. You've done nothing wrong. And also, you don't want to keep hurting yourself over and over again, right? So, how to kind of balance that with, I'm here now. I'm safe now. I'm in this body now. And when those feelings come up, I know how to process them. I know how to let them move through me and not stay stuck in me. And I imagine part of your alcohol use, and I know some of it because, of course, I've read your book, but is just the stuffing, and then it's going to come out sideways, right? And,
Right, right.
and
Well,
so,
it's the mental chatter that we want to quiet, right?
mm,
The voices in the head, like you're talking
yeah,
about, the ruminating, the
yeah,
demons that just, the inner critic, and the alcohol just quieted that, right? Just numbed
mhm,
that out and made that go disappear, but it came out in other ways that were worse. Um,
mhm,
and so, at the time then too, I didn't even realize that I was using that as a crutch. I didn't really it just was this unawareness, almost this like a sleep. I felt like when I became alcohol free, I was waking up to all of the things around me. But most importantly, this connection to that little girl, to that
mhm,
inner knowing. And when I had alcohol, it was always fogged out. It was always blurred. I could not feel that true, authentic self ever, even if I had not drank for a whole week, because, right, it takes 5 days for alcohol to leave our system. And so it just never really felt like, even though I never hit a rock bottom, that I was ever really truly getting to the inside of who Meg was.
mhm,
And even the bad part, not bad parts, there are no bad parts, but the hard parts, right? The
mhm,
difficult parts, and learning how to love all parts of myself. And I just don't think I could, or I know I couldn't do that with a substance in the way. I just I want to feel all the emotions, as difficult as they are. I mean, even crying here, like I wasn't sure if I would cry today, but it's okay, right? Like it's
mhm,
okay. And sometimes it's the release that we need, and a trusted friend, a therapist, whatever it is, to make sure that we do feel safe and that we do feel supported. It's okay to ask for help through this, because I'm just such a big proponent of someone like yourself as a life coach, because everything you're saying as I'm done talking is like, yes, like you're supporting exactly the healing process and the thought process, and that affirmation of the work that you do in conjunction with a life coach or a therapist really then just propels you forward through this healing journey. And it's an ongoing healing journey.
yeah, definitely. I love this. Ditching the drink for you has been a spiritual journey, is what it sounds like to me, like a connection to you and your source, true
Yes.
source that you maybe never had. And now it's becoming your life's work with the community, with the talking, with your book, with sharing your story with other women. It's so, so beautiful. But I'm curious how kind of like beauty or sexuality sort of interacts with this and has in your past, because you had these terrible situations with men and then also turned into, well, I don't know about you, but I was on a lot of all male sales teams. I was often like the only female. And I think we have some of that in common, or working with a lot of men. I think you now work with like physicians, and a lot of them are male, probably. So maybe being like a female in a more male dominated industry. And then these beauty standards and these fillers and Botox or whatever, like whose standards are they? And what was your goal, and how confusing is that? Like, I'm coming in with the shoes and the purse and the hair, whatever. Can you share a little bit about that story and where you're at today with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was really, really stuck in the beauty culture. I mean, I sold the two largest, launched the two largest wrinkle fillers in the world. And so I was immensely immersed in this culture of looking a certain way, appearing a certain way. And what was so sad, and again, I go back to that little girl, that young girl with compassion, is that I was seeking so much outside validation and approval because I was getting my worth from my appearance and from the outside approval. And that is like, aging happens every day, and, we
Right.
get wrinkles and people's minds change how they feel about you. And so
Right.
for somebody who was in an over functioning and wanted to control everything, that was a constant rat race of
And
trying
a
to keep up with the
perfect.
Joneses.
It's also like feeds the never enoughness because there's
Yes.
always another shot to take and a thing to pluck and lift and right. Like
Yes.
it feeds this never enoughness. And the other thing is that not enoughness and that low self-worth felt like home to you. That was
Yes.
familiar. It's what you
That was
knew.
the familiar hell that they talk about.
Yeah. So it's like, not that it was good or right, but it's what you knew. So it felt like home. And
Yeah. And
so no wonder you sought that out in other ways. And no wonder like a beauty culture would be a perfect fit because it feeds the never enoughness. And that's what's familiar to you. Right.
And as a young girl, I got into modeling. So at very young age, in eighth grade, I started modeling. So from again, a very impressive young age, was like, oh, I need to look a certain way. Oh, I need to show up a certain way. Oh, people will give me attention if I look this way and I act this way and I achieve the sales and I go out to the bars all night and I look this, I mean, I was literally the Budweiser girl passing out passing out
Mm-hmm.
beers. And then I was the Jägermeister girl doing Jägermeister shots and passing it out and
Mm-hmm.
looking all of this, a certain part. Meanwhile, not really realizing what I was selling, as well as saying to my own self, like, that this surface stuff was more important than, and I think that's why this work now for me with my community and with my book and wanting to help so many women, and the conversation that we're having today, is that it is the most soul fulfilling. It is the most, I have a little bit of makeup on today because I knew I was getting on camera with you, but I don't even really wear makeup anymore. I don't do my nails. I just don't care. I used to care so much about all of that. And it was exhausting. And we know that where we find rest, for me, it was in wine,
Mm-hmm.
and so keeping up with all of that is an empty, empty place to live. And I have no desire to go back there. I'm not poo-pooing if people do Botox or poo-pooing if you do fillers or whatever. Like, you go do you and whatever makes you feel more like you. But I was so caught up in this, facade, that I even had some plastic surgery done, which I completely regret because and I've never spoken about this, but I had my breasts done, and my mammograms are extremely painful, and I want to get them out, and I completely regret it. Nobody was telling me, like, oh, by the way, when you go get a mammogram, they have to like push it out of the way, and it is going to be excruciatingly painful, and you're going to have scars, and oh, when you want to get them out, this is like the 10 things you're going to have to do with surgery. And nobody told me all these things. I literally was living in these physicians, these plastic surgeons' offices, where it was so normalized. I was just seeing breast implants all over the place and people getting Botox and fillers and all of this, that it was almost like the big alcohol industry. It was everywhere around my day, everywhere I went. And so it was like, oh, not a big deal. You just go get some breast implants. It's a
Mm-hmm.
huge deal. And I do regret it personally. And I know a lot of women don't. And that's, again, I'm not poo-pooing it. But for me, I wish that somebody could have said, have you thought about this? And what about that? And, it just wasn't
Mhm.
having those conversations either. It's just kind of like the same thing with alcohol. Do you know this is a highly addictive drug? Are you sure you want to start drinking this? Like, it is a
Mhm.
carcinogen. Do you know your mammograms are going to be excruciating and that you're going to have to get rid of these things in about 10 to 12 years? Like, is this what you want to do, is have another surgery? And so, again, these are conversations that we just don't have. We just don't talk about.
Mhm.
And we just see the pictures of the beauty and what we think is beautiful in this world. And to me, what beauty is now is this connection with the inner knowing and the spiritual awakening and reclaiming our joy in our lives and loving ourselves no matter how we look, no matter
Mhm.
how we appear.
Yeah, it's definitely not about how we look. Although I am a little jealous of being an eighth grade supermodel because I did want that. But yeah, so you did some of the work of healing yourself while still drinking, married your husband, doing these sales, doing being in the world of plastic surgery and all this stuff. And then you got alcohol free. And then would you say you like really did the work? Is that when you did the somatic therapy
Yes, that's when I did the
and when you
somatic.
feel like more healed? And of course it's an ongoing process, and
Yeah,
now so healed that you're capable of talking about it,
yeah,
spreading the good
yeah,
word.
yeah. I thought, like I said, I had done some therapy, so I had thought I was okay. And then when I had that body reaction to seeing it in a movie, I realized, and you know what? I probably, and now I'm just realizing this, having this conversation with you, may have even watched it while I was drinking. I did this.
Mm.
This is like a light bulb that just went
Mhm.
off here for me,
This is a
and
coaching call.
couldn't feel the
Yeah.
body reaction that I was probably having because I had so much wine in me.
Mhm.
And just realizing this. And
Mm.
so being alcohol free and then watching it and my body going, rah, 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 right? We're having
Yeah.
alarms about this. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, this is still in my body. This
Mhm.
has to be healed. That was when I started the somatic therapy. And I just, that connection just came through while we were just
I love
talking, as I
that. I love
probably did
that.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah. The ditching the drink is the most empowering thing you can do, truly. And if you want to truly heal, you can do all that other work you want. But if you're still drinking, you're not getting to the source. And I'm sorry to say that. You're not going to get as far as you want to go. When you let go of alcohol, you can really, really get in touch with your inner self and your inner knowing, as you say, and really start to address those long held traumas in your body, resentments, disappointments, any anger, and grief, any of the tough stuff. You can repair, you can heal through connection, through the work, as they say, but that is the work, is getting it up and out of your body, telling somebody about it, getting some tools and coping skills, letting yourself feel what you feel, having radical acceptance. But you end a lot of the suffering, when you start to address it. So that's the
And
number
we
one
have to
thing.
we have to feel it to heal it, like they say,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
can't feel it. I mean, I just realized I probably had never felt it.
Right. You were seeing it, but not feeling it because you were
Yeah,
dumbed down.
yeah, exactly,
Totally. You weren't like
exactly.
fully present there as, those images were going across your eyes. You were turning your brain off, so you wouldn't
Yeah,
know. What's
yeah.
the next step for you in your journey of healing and advocacy and personal growth?
Just really a focus on my community. It brings me the greatest joy. I don't know. I've been toying with a possible second book around what we're doing in the community on emotional sobriety. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. And I just really want women to have these safe spaces where they can have these conversations, have access to a coach like yourself where they can get the support that they need, just to know that they are enough and that, all this stuff we're not talking about and all that superficial outside approval is just, it's all an intoxicating lie.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have all your information in the show notes, but why don't you tell listeners how they can connect with your work and find some of the resources like your book and your community that you mentioned today?
Thanks, Heather. So my website is intoxicatinglies.com or meggeiswhite.com, but intoxicating lies is a little easier to spell.
Nobody knows how to spell that.
Nobody knows how to spell my
I
last
don't know how
name.
to say it. You've only told me like a million times, and I'm still like, wait, Guys White? Is that right?
I know, it's a mouthful.
Intoxicatinglies.com.
Intoxicatinglies.com or at Intoxicating Lies Book on Instagram. And that is linked to my Facebook, which is the title of the book, Intoxicating Lies, One Woman's Journey to Freedom from Gray Area Drinking. So thank you so much, Heather, for having me here today. And people can find out about my community. The next cohort is opening in January. You do not need to be a writer to join. We do a lot of healing through writing journal prompts, but you do not need to be a writer. And that opens in January, and that's on my website as well at intoxicatinglies.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Meg. I'm really proud of you. I feel really honored that you had this conversation with me, that you offered it, that you brought it up. I'm thrilled I got to be the one to do it with you. I think you did an incredible job sharing. I think it's going to help so many women. I know that it's going to help so many women out there. I appreciate you so, so very much. And I just want to reiterate, it was not your fault. None of those things were ever your fault. Okay. I love you.
Thanks, Heather. I love you too. Thanks for making me feel safe.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Peripatia Podcast, a talk show for women. Don't forget to download my free ebook, The 12 Truths to Change Your Life. Do it for the plot. We'll see you in the next episode. Lots of love.